So as a creative, there are two phrases that kill me. One is, we've always done it like this, and the other is, this is the way it is. Because if you give me 5 minutes, I promise you I can find that we haven't always done it like this. And if this is the way it is, then it was another way before, and it can be another way now or later. So I encourage you to hold everything you've heard today with open palms, and I want to get us rooted. I first want to acknowledge we are in occupied Coast Salish territories. I want to acknowledge and invite in my ancestors, both known and unknown, and yours, especially the ones that I'm not that proud of. Because we need to exist in our wholeness in order to be truly creative and truly just people. Seattle, as we heard, is an innovative city, and I want to keep it real. Innovation requires creativity from the grassroots to be just. Otherwise, innovation is just growth. And I'm not an oncologist, but just growth sounds like cancer to me. So I want to illuminate some areas that I think are cancerous for us. The first being mass incarceration and militarization of the police. In 2013, we gave $500 million to police in militarized equipment, and currently up to $4.3 billion across the United States. We have 5% of the Earth's population, and yet we have in cages incarcerating 25% of those incarcerated peoples globally. Now, what does that look like in Seattle? Well, it looks like building a $210 million new jail to cage youth. It looks like spending $149 million on a police bunker, which I just heard might have been halted. Hallelujah. And Kermit says that's none of my business, but we all have to say that is my business to be a part of, because it's growing our inequality gap. While our city is booming, the gap between the rich and the poor, the gap between who gets access to education, who gets access to health care, is rapidly growing. It's highly racialized, and it's genderized. And we need to acknowledge that. One way that looks is around the issue of houselessness. And in 2005, Seattle said, we're going to end houselessness in 10 years. It's 2016, and the one-night count was 4,505 people. Seattle is ranked the 4th highest of cities and metropolitan areas, having the 4th highest population of houseless folks. To talk about houselessness, we also need to talk about displacement and gentrification. And as we saw, displacement didn't just start 10 years ago. It actually started the moment white settler colonials decided they were going to come and take over the land. And so we need to acknowledge that Seattle has a history of displacement that not only says, yo, we're going to take your totem poles and we're going to use your tribal names and even the name of your chief, and then we're going to act like you're not here. Where are the natives in our city? Where do they live? Where do they exist? And there's a reason why I put the school to prison pipeline last. Is because all of this, the only way it persists is if we have a permanent underclass of people who don't have access to education, don't have access to wealth, don't have access to the government. Then we can go ahead and keep capitalism and colonialism going just as it is. But all of that is for naught if global warming happens. If it gets hot, the black, brown, and poor people will die first, but everyone else is going. So now y'all are like, this was a really inspiring night, Nikkita, you're making me depressed. I promise you there is a turn here. I think creativity that comes from the grassroots, creativity that comes from the most impacted can make innovation medicine. It can make innovation healthy. It can mean we can all live and have access to equal and equitable resources. What does that look like in Seattle right now? Well, it looks like creative justice, an arts-based alternative to incarceration. It looks like using technology creatively. Some of y'all know Brett Hamlin. Some of y'all know Matt Speculation, who have said, we're going to look at the city, the issues in the city, and we're going to use technology and humor to get all y'all on board with it. Because there are people of color and organizers constantly and council chambers trying to get our city to see how important it is that we organize around these issues. And one major win was getting our city to say, we commit to zero detention. We're going to find a way to get there. And one way they're doing that is they gave $600,000 to the Epic Giving Project and said, here's some seed money. We know y'all have the solutions. Go ahead and build them. Well, what else does that look like? It looks like South Seattle is really showing up. Jill told you about the report, Our Planet, our people, our power. This is what it looks like to have racial equity crossed with environmental justice. It's not just about white people. Environmental justice isn't just getting on your bikes. I don't do that, it's scary. It looks like the South Seattle Emerald saying, we're not going to rely on Cairo, Como, and King to tell our story anymore because they never get it right. We're going to tell our own story and our own voice. It looks like pop-ups and arts innovation that don't just feed our souls and our minds, but also feeds our bodies, acknowledging that we do have all of the creative solutions to take this booming economic environment and make it work for us. But there are a few things that I love about Seattle that I hope don't change. One is our culture of protest and our creative culture of protest. Yeah, the Christmas tree lighting got shut down a few times. So what? Black people are being murdered at unprecedented rates. Yes, the flotilla stopped the big oil monster from taking over. These are incredible things that Seattle can bring to the nation as a whole to say, we're going to be resistant, we're going to be rebellious. And even here, whether you agree with what happened or not, these two young women's actions brought to the surface what we already know about Seattle. It's really not that progressive, and it's really not that liberal. Deep down, we have a lot of racial tensions that we're not really willing to dig into. Crosswalks are great. They're awesome. But if I go in the city and see red, black, and green, but see no black people, then it's just a museum to black people. So I think one of the things I take away from thinking about the region of boom is we really need to start incorporating the creative strategies that exist at the grassroots, that exist in the communities of the most impacted, into our innovation. Because if we don't, as I said, innovation without creativity from those folks becomes just growth, and just growth looks a lot like cancer. But I stay in Seattle for two key reasons. One, Octavia Butler, because in all of her books, she says that in a dystopian society, Seattle's the only place we can survive because there's water. But maybe more realistically, I stay because I do genuinely believe that this is a place where people are willing to see that innovation, meet the creative solutions of the most impacted, and not only will we become medicine for ourselves here, but we can become an example, a medicine for other cities nationally. Thank you.